In a world so mad, we're so glad you tuned into LadyProbs. Hey there, LadyProbers, and welcome to the second season, second episode of LadyProbs. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about weddings. Hashtag hitched. I freaking love weddings, Brittany. I freaking love them. They're like
today,
an addiction.
Even today, we are watching 4 weddings, and I was explaining to my partner, okay, there's 4 women, and they all have their extravagant weddings, and they all like rate each other. If I could be anything in this world, it would be a wedding / event planner. They make me so happy.
I can see that. Yeah. I was talking about conditions with Danny. We went to the mountain today to go snowboarding and skiing. And on the way home, we have an hour drive. So it's like, what else do you talk about? But I was talking about today's episode and what I would like to do. And I was like, there's so many things to think of, like how many people do you invite and like how much money you have. And I was like, I would picturesquely like a June wedding, but June is a famous date because it's not too hot and not too cold. And it's like, oh my gosh, so much pressure. Yeah. And I think a lot of the pressure for weddings, especially like maybe in America, I would say, or globally too, you know, in a lot of cultures, it definitely stems from tradition and also Hollywood.
Alexi and I talk about it all the time, and we know already that our biggest obstacle will be family influence when it comes time to planning our wedding. Because we come from 2 different religions too, which is not an ideal situation when you can only get married in one place. So yeah, I definitely feel like there's a lot of like media pressures, it's a day that you want to look perfect. And sometimes it comes with, unanticipated anxieties that, it's supposed to be your day. So
you're supposed to be glowing, they say, exactly. You get the light spray tan like the week before and you get your hair highlighted and your nails all done. And that's just with the bride. Thinking about all the prep for the groom and the bride's people and the whole 9 yards.
The parents, the family, the ring bearer, the flower girl. And then the guests themselves have a
lot of responsibility. If you're invited to a wedding, like get ready to ship out at least $300 between buying a present, getting an Airbnb or a hotel, travel expenses like driving, plane, whatever. If it's a destination wedding, good luck. Like, it's gonna be a lot of fun though. But
yeah, definitely. So I'm super excited for this episode. Though we have our good friend Jesse, who recently was getting married and planning a wedding. She got married last year to one of our other friends, and we're so excited to have her on this episode today.
Yeah, I am so pumped. Jesse is like my favorite human being on planet Earth. Like she is like my favorite list. She is like up there. She's the sweetest human being in the entire world. And I went to her wedding and it was a blast. And I'm really excited to talk to her about her experience because she's such a genuine person. And I really think she can give best advice for future brides. And just, I think we're going to kick around different traditions on what to keep and what to ditch, how we feel about DIY. Because, with TikTok and YouTube, I see a lot of wedding planners on those platforms talking about what we can do differently. I think honestly, with COVID, a lot of things have changed socially, how we interact with each other. And weddings was one of the big ones, as well as like graduations and proms and things like that. But, a wedding, you start thinking about it or maybe even saving up or planning it when you're a young person. Like you start seeing these movies by like 9 years old, and then by the time you're 16 you might start saving up for it, and then the time you're ready to get married, like you already know what flowers you want, and because you've pinned so many Pinterest boards.
Exactly. And in my research, I found a pretty interesting fact that in the 1900s, in the year 1900, the average age for females getting married was only 22 years old. And surprisingly, that same year, the average for the male was just over 26 years old. Now in 2020, they found at out that the average age for females getting married is 27, almost 28 years old, and the average male is just over 29 years old, almost 30 years old. So we've seen this like societal shift that, you know, as farming becomes less popular of a demand, and we don't have the existence of dowries anymore, the traditions that, you know, the bride's family pays for the whole shebang, the whole event is moving away. And you find, especially in 2020, thinking about who is that demographic of who's getting married, it's the millennials. You know, the millennials who are either in their mid 30s to mid 20s that are becoming or finding themselves more independent. They're not relying on partners at such a young age anymore. Of course, there's still some exceptions. We see high school sweethearts tend to get married. Those who are entering the military tend to get married young still. We really have that shift where, you know, your 20s are more focused on building that foundation for yourself, and then 30s is that time to settle down. So you know, media definitely is having an influence.
And with media too, I want to just like, movies about weddings are my favorite type of rom-coms. They're so exciting. Just listing off of the top of my head wedding movies, just thinking about this, I watched Bride Wars the other night. There's 27 Dresses.
My favorite.
There's freaking Father of the Bride with Steve Martin. Oh my God. Both of those movies, the Father of the Bride 1 and 2, are both my favorite movies in the entire world.
Yeah. You know which one I watched last night? I watched Princess Diaries and Princess Diaries 2 Royal Engagement.
Yeah.
At one point, I was watching it in the living room, and Alexi was in his game room, his man cave, which is right across the wall. And he heard me like being like, yes, like great, during that last ending scene monologue. And he was
where she's like walking down the stairs and she's being queened. Is that what it is?
Right before that, when it's supposed to be her wedding and she gives that motion.
Oh, the speech. Yeah.
Monologue. And it was just such a great empowering.
I love Anne Hathaway.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But we also have the classic comedy ones like Bridesmaids. That was such a cult classic movie that Maya Rudolph and Kirsten Wiig, you know, the ladies of SNL, they brought that humor and kind of revealing those like the funny pieces of planning a wedding. You know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I think that's everybody's biggest fears too. And thinking back to talking about millennials getting married, a lot of people are doing things differently. You know, say taking Father of the Bride, for example, you have the classic, like gorgeous white dress, gorgeous, like 6-tiered wedding cake. They get married in a church and then they have the reception at the house. A big wedding tent, a big band, you know, catered, whatever. But now millennials are eloping, is more intimate gatherings where instead of inviting 100 or 160 people, it's now like 20 or even 10 people. There's more sustainability in weddings because weddings is actually a lot of waste. People are thinking about how they can live this day and celebrate their love without breaking the bank either.
Yeah, and making sure that it's about you and the person that you're marrying too, because one of the things that I have anxieties about is planning this spectacle that is more like an acceptance of the family that I'm going into rather than a day that's actually a reflection of my relationship with my partner who I'm marrying. So, I mean, making sure that, yes, there's small personal details with the event planning, especially if you're planning the wedding on your own without a wedding planner, still having those like intimate details. And exactly as you say, making sure that, you know, you have people at the wedding that actually want to be there and want to experience this event. So that way you're not just wasting money on a person that doesn't even enjoy your company, or, you know, taking the time. You're going to have to take the time to talk to every single person at your wedding to be a good hostess. So if you are not willing to sit down with that person for 15 minutes at your wedding, you probably shouldn't invite them.
Yeah, it's that that conversation too about like, not only are you a bride and you're getting married, but you're also host of a party. You're basically saving up. I think the average people spend on money, I think, is $30,000. Is that correct?
2019, the average cost of a wedding in 2019, and the reason why I did that is because Zoom weddings have kind of taken over. So 2020 is that oddball. It's going to be significantly less. But when we were pre-COVID, it was $33,000 and just over $33,000. And in that study that showed the expenses, half of the individuals said that it was worth it to pay thousands of dollars for the dress, the cake, and the photographer. But ironically, the three things that people would cut the most were the wedding planner. They would rather just plan it themselves.
Really?
They would have cut the videographer. For some reason, folks would rather have still pictures rather than video. And then they would cut wedding favors as well, because that's an expense as well. So either they would cut them all together, or they would have done it differently, where they would have planned for each favor going to each couple or family rather than each individual. So that could cut your costs significantly if you only give it to a select group of people.
I definitely see that. I think also people are bored of weddings, like if you're a guest and you're invited to three weddings per year or season, that's a lot of cocktail hours and the first dance and the cutting of the cake and the bouquet toss. And it gets repetitive after a while. So I think a lot of couples want to spice it up a little. And like you said, instead of having a video, maybe somebody buys a bunch of Polaroid cameras and leaves them at a guest table and have the guests be the photographers. Or even hire a young college student who just graduated with a bachelor's degree in photography and have them take pictures. It saves a lot of money. You work with small businesses and everybody has a better time and a unique experience. So
yeah. And to that point, there was an individual who I graduated with he is one of the most skilled photographers and videographers I've ever met in my life. He had a phenomenal portfolio. And once he graduated from college, he wanted to start his own videography LLC. And he had found that his first gig was a wedding. And the reason why they wanted to hire him is because not only was his work beautiful, what he presented thus far, but also he was more attentive than the other individuals that they had interviewed previously, because he was so new to the game and he wanted to truly impress the first client of his. So sometimes going with an unknown person or a startup business or a recent graduate or even somebody who is a photography major or minor, that may be your best bet to get the best service.
Yeah, you get a fresh pair of eyes, fresh perspective, something a little bit more modern and enthusiastic. Yeah. I say it's pretty good. Well, and there's so many details like that to go through, to comb through when you're planning your wedding. All right, welcome back, everyone, on this episode of #Hitched, where we have a very special guest. Her name is Jessie. Hi, Jessie.
Hi, ladies.
She looks like a very familiar face because she was actually featured on our first ever episode, What Makes a Woman, which we are so grateful she was on. And now we can talk to her personally because last year, before COVID, she got married to her partner in October. And I was personally an attendee of the wedding, and I had a freaking great time. So we wanted to talk about Jessie and her experience as a new bride and how that planning went and all that good stuff. So what's going on, Jessie?
I have to first say that it was so fun to just kind of reflect and think about it because it was such a fun day. And I think for a lot of people, the planning process is really stressful. And there were certainly moments that were really, really stressful, but I think overall I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm excited to talk about it. I think for other people, I've talked to friends who are like triggered by talking about it. I think for me, it's just really fun. So I'm really happy to have that opportunity. So thank you both for having me on.
Yeah. That's actually a really refreshing response to that, because I feel like so many people are like, oh my God, I'm planning my wedding. It's like having like my third mental breakdown. And my question is like, I don't even know where I would start with. Like, do you get your dress first? Do you like pick a venue first? Like, do you do your guest? Like, where do you even begin with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, our sort of first, I think, step was thinking about the time of the year that we wanted to get married. We both were really pretty set in the fall. Aiden, because he's like, I don't want to sweat in a tux. And if we do winter time, there'll probably be a snowstorm and people won't be able to get here.
Yeah,
and I just love fall. So we kind of had planned out fall, and then definitely figuring out a venue is sort of the first step, because you have to have a date in order to sort of figure out all those other pieces and all the other vendors. So we sort of figured out fall, we got a venue and a date. And then after that, it kind of like, there's a lot of details, don't get me wrong, but I feel like once you have a venue and a date, it's like official, and you can kind of like start sorting out all the other 100 billion details that there are.
Yeah. For most people, I was looking at the average is it takes about 13 months to 18 months to plan a wedding. What worked for you guys to plan?
Yeah, so we got engaged on Christmas Day of 2018, and then we had our wedding the following October of 2019.
Yeah,
so we did a little under a year.
Yeah. Did you find that was more stressful?
Well, I actually feel like it'd be more stressful. I mean, I don't have anything to compare it to since this is my first wedding, but I think that for most people, like a year is kind of like the minimum, at least from my friends. So I don't know. I think it kind of like forced us to sort of get going with it, which that's kind of who I am in general, is I'm pretty type A. So I kind of wanted to be on top of it and kind of just like get it all done. So I think for me, if it had been longer, I probably would have been more stressed.
Yeah, I could definitely, like, Alexi and I aren't even engaged, but like there's some details where you just kind of know even before you're engaged. Like we were talking, Kaylee and I were talking about this before, where like, you know, it's typical where especially young girls kind of like dream about their wedding all throughout their lives, like with media influences and stuff. So there's almost already like imagery,
like you already know your theme. Yeah. Before you even like get a partner relationship going. You're like,
yeah, 100%. I feel like it's definitely something I thought about from like maybe 5 years old on. So
yeah, just kind of like insert groom here. it kind of like
you're like, okay, next step in the plans. So did you hire a wedding planner, or did you do this all by yourself, or like who helped you? Family members, anything?
So we actually got really lucky. Our venue, which was the Old Lantern in Charlotte, Vermont, they actually, part of their package deal is a wedding planner comes with the cost of the venue, which was amazing. Like I would highly recommend if you find a place that has that option, it's such a big advantage. So the planner was amazing. She basically was like, just text me whenever you need to. And I tried to be respectful of boundaries. Like, I'm not going to text you at like, 12 a.m. But she was awesome. So that was a big help. Aiden was actually, my partner Aiden was a really big help too. He definitely like wanted to be part of the process, and we sort of divvied out a couple bigger responsibilities. And he's somebody who like just needs to know what to do. Like I need to just like tell him and he'll do it. But if I don't ask, he's not going to offer. So I had to sort of just like, here's your to-do list.
Here's your list.
Here's your honey to-do list.
Yeah.
So he was really helpful. The planner was really helpful. And then our parents, like both sides of the family, were super generous emotionally and financially. So I feel like biggest help was we would not have had a wedding if it wasn't for our families. So shout out to the Warhols and the Milligans.
Yes. And I think that's such a rare thing to find. I mean, both family supporting financially and emotionally, like it's not always how people think of it because of the normal traditions that, the bride's family pays everything. Like, let's move away from that.
I agree. We felt really, really fortunate. We both have families that are like very low key, which I just in general feel really lucky to have the families that we do. But they were really great. Like there wasn't we both kind of felt like, okay, our families are helping so much financially. If there's things that are really important to them, we'll definitely like do those things because they're making it possible. but there was like no demands really that they made of us. I'm trying to think if there were, but I don't think so. Like they were really, really open-minded to what we wanted to do, which is just,
that's awesome.
Yeah, like you said, pretty rare, I think.
Yeah. And also, if I remember correctly, you guys used the website The Knot to do like a save the date type of thing. Is that correct?
I can't even I'm trying to remember.
I know a couple of our friends have used The Knot, and it's like, I remember you get the save the date in the mail, and then you create like a little website, almost like an Instagram for yourself. And it's a profile where you go in and you see like more details about the wedding, like the venue, and pictures of like what it looks like on the bride's side and the groom's side, things like that.
We did do that. Thanks for reminding me. There's like so many details that I didn't even remember that, but yeah, we did do that.
Yeah, I think it's so nice that there's like social media platforms now that are making it a little bit easier for guests and people who are hosting their wedding to get through all those details and stuff.
Yeah, and definitely. Like The Knot is a very popular one. I know a few friends that had weddings this year used The Knot. There's also like Wedding Wire, but yeah, for brides that are planning their own wedding without the help of a planner, you could do like your own website, the seating chart, the guest list, and a lot of them have like you can put everybody's contact information. So if you need to, contact somebody, send those invitations yourself, it's all in one spot. So
how
it's kind
of
the DIY.
While we're talking about The Knot, I gathered some items in preparation, and one was, I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but I actually got a knot planner.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, wow.
That was, my mom gave it to me as a gift, and it was like so helpful. Like that was something that helped me too, is it goes through like any detail you would want. So some of the things we didn't incorporate because it just wasn't important to us, but it like gives you a nice timeline. So if you're doing it in a year, it kind of spells out like, okay, by month like 3, you should have these things done. By month 4, see if I could find that. The timeline was like the best part. I use that to help me a lot.
I bet
that The Knot should sponsor us.
I feel that could be definitely like an anxiety like reducer, is just the timeline, and the budget is really like, that's what people stress about the most.
Yeah, I can't find it, but I agree with you. Yeah, I think the timeline, and then I think we definitely were trying to be mindful of costs, even though we had, primarily we paid for part of it, but it was a lot of family generosity. So I can certainly understand if you're doing it yourself, that like every little penny counts. So yeah.
So how did you choose, talking about finances, how did you choose on what to splurge on or what to cut on? Because I know there's a lot of big decisions you have to make. Is this worth it? Is it definitely important to us?
I feel like it was great because we kind of agreed, I think, on the things that were important to us. Like we were really adamant we wanted to have a band, which is definitely traditionally more expensive than a DJ. So we went with a band. And so that was probably one of our bigger splurges. Photographer, for me, I was like, photographer is like the most important thing. I want to have pictures that I love to look back on. So that was another bit of a splurge. Those were kind of our 2 like most important vendors, I think. So our venue though, like the Old Lantern, I feel like they do an amazing job. I also want to put in a plug for the Old Lantern and Julie, who's the planner, who's like literally was just the calmest person on earth. And I am not the calmest person on earth. So she like helped me regulate a lot. But the venue, I feel like it's very, very reasonable for what you get. So we kind of were able to have a little wiggle room with like, okay, the venue is like not going to take up the bulk of our budget. So I feel like we sort of decided like photographer and band are like our 2 big splurges. Also, I think hair and makeup, now thinking back to it, like hair and makeup was really expensive, but that was kind of important to me too, of like, when else are you going to have a day where you kind of feel so glamorous and have like all of your loved ones with you? So that was kind of a splurge also.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And every bride is different and has their kind of like their needs and wants list. And before we were talking about, a lot of folks said that they would have cut like giving like wedding favors to people. So it's interesting how there is kind of like that switch of each decade, people focus on a different trend to have at their weddings. And the things that are dying out nowadays are just so interesting, with people using websites like Still White to get like a thrifted wedding dress. I feel like that's such an interesting concept, because we have these shows like Say Yes to the Dress, where we see people spending
oh my
tens
God,
of thousands
so
of
much
dollars
money
on a dress. And then there's kind of like that Vermont culture, and even like this new millennial culture where people are going to thrift shops to go get their dresses. They're using these websites and social media to resource a dress. And yeah, it's so interesting to me, that kind of switch in trends nowadays.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like with Vermont too, like I think there is definitely a culture on like trying to sort of make it feel like, for us it was really important that it felt authentic to who we were, and wasn't just sort of like, here are the things that you do at a wedding. Like we wanted it to feel like it was us, and not just sort of like a scripted template like, that we were following.
This is what we have to do because society tells us we have to do this.
Right, because there are so many things that I feel like you see like traditionally that are sort of expectations of a wedding. And there's a lot of things we don't like that are traditional.
Yeah, there's like, I always thought that like the throwing of the bouquet and then like the garter situation was always like a little off
Brittany,
for me.
Same.
A little awkward.
Literally same. I hate the garter tradition more than anything.
Yeah. Kaylee knows this story because it was a family wedding. But when I think I was like 16 or 17 years old, definitely not of age yet, of like legal adult age, but we were at our cousin's wedding.
It was definitely flirting with inappropriate. Let's just say that.
Yeah. And like, thankfully this was a distant cousin, but I ended up catching the bouquet. And same side of the family, but like not blood related to me, caught the garter. And I was just like, this is the most awkward like situation. And I can't drink because I'm under 18. Like, oh, my
like,
God.
Hey everyone.
Wow. Legal age yet? Oh my God. So I never want to do that garter tradition.
Yeah.
Not for me.
I'm so with you. It's also like you have like your family there and somebody's like up your thigh. Like I just feel like I don't want like grandparents seeing that, or like my family. It just, I feel like it's really, and again, to all those who have done it or plan to do it, to each their own. But I just feel like for me personally, I was like, that's definitely going to be one of the first things that goes.
Yeah, definitely.
There was a lot of things that I noticed you guys did where it was traditional and then definitely not traditional. Like I remember you guys had maybe one tier of a cake. Like you guys didn't really do a cake cutting that I remember. You guys had cupcakes, right?
We were supposed to, but we got too distracted by dancing. We like missed timeline. So we were like, that's fine. We don't really care about the cake too much. So
yeah. And then also I remember Aiden's sister, who's about my age, about like, was she 22 at the time, I think.
Yes.
She, oh my God, she killed a suit. She was on Aiden's side of the family, standing with the groomsmen, as they traditionally are called, and she freaking killed that suit. And I think we should see more of that. Like I have a really close male best friend who I consider a brother to me, another Winfield. And I want him to stand on my side when I get #hitched one day, and he can rock a suit if he wants to. He can rock a skirt if he wants to. I don't care. But I really want to have almost like the bride's side and the groom's side, instead of like the groomsmen and the bridesmaids.
Yeah, I loved that too, that she was like, we called her a groomswoman, and she's just like super trendy in general, and like just could rock anything that she did. So I feel like she was perfect for that. But I feel like a part of that too is that I have an older sister, and I didn't actually have my sister in the wedding. So that's another thing that's kind of a traditional thing that we kind of ended up scrapping. It just didn't feel authentic to me. I'm not super close with my sister. She's much, much older. And then my brother's wife, it was this thing where I kind of wanted, hopefully they don't hear this. I wanted to have my brother's wife because I am really close with her, but not my biological sister. And my mom, that was one thing my mom's like, you're not going to do that. And I was like, I know, I can't do that. And I also kind of wanted to have August, Aiden's sister, in the wedding party. So we kind of figured out like, we'll have her on Aiden's side, and then I'll just have neither of the sisters and kind of talk to them about like how it's going to sort of be more of my peer group. And they were both totally fine with that. Like they're moms, and they were kind of like, we don't really want to do that anyway. So it kind of worked out fine. But yeah, I loved that she was on Aiden's side. That was really kind of a fun twist.
Yeah. And then one thing I also love that I saw, didn't you wear sneakers?
Yes, I did.
I love that.
I wore Kate Spade like pink sparkly sneakers, and that was like one of my favorite parts of the day, honestly, because they were so comfortable. I hate high heels.
Oh, I hate them too. Oh my gosh.
Hate them. I never wear them. So it's like, why would I wear them for like a really long day where I want to like enjoy myself?
Yeah.
And yeah, I got so many compliments on them. I love them. Like I can't wait to wear them again. I haven't actually had an opportunity with quarantine to like really wear them again, but
yeah.
I always joke with Alexi that like we want to get married in fall, and one thing that's so close to us is like apple picking and those like traditional Vermont things. So I always joke that I'm gonna just like wear my Tevas on my wedding day. Like
yeah,
it's probably gonna be muddy, like, you know, just wear Tevas. Who cares?
Yeah, I'm gonna wear Doc Martens on my wedding day. No, I'm just kidding. Stomp down the aisle.
Yeah, like you have to be comfortable, and I feel like especially if you have like a longer dress, they don't even really show.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun that I kind of like snuck them out a few times, and it kind of felt like a little peekaboo surprise.
Yeah.
Funny. I love that.
Yeah. It was so cute. Well, we're gonna take a quick break real quick, but when we come back, we're gonna be talking about more trends to keep and to ditch. Okay. Has anyone heard of the shoe game that's going viral on the internet?
The shoe game?
Yeah, they play this shoe game at weddings now where like a groom and a bride, or a bride and a bride, groom and groom, I don't know.
Oh, yes.
Partners go back to back, and the guy who runs the party, he like asks them questions about their life, and they take off one shoe and they hold it up over their head to see, like, they ask questions like, oh, who like holds the remote control? And like, you know, they both obviously like put their own shoe up.
If it's like the bride.
Yeah.
I do know what you're talking about.
Who snores, and they both put up like the men's shoe and stuff.
Yeah.
I would rather have that than a bouquet toss, personally.
I think that's like a really fun trend. I like that.
It's a very like get to know you, and especially like you're having both sides. So each side gets to know the person that is going to be part of their family too.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. And it's just kind of like fun and silly and lighthearted, where I feel like the bouquet tradition is just kind of intense. It's like,
it's like all the single like, let's call out all the single women in this room right now.
I just feel like it's right. And it's also like some people choose to be single and want to be single, and that's perfectly acceptable and a life choice that like you should be able to make. And I just feel like it's kind of like like get ready to get married, because that's something you need to do to be like an actual adult.
Yeah. So not to mention it gets like intense and like creates too much like unfriendly competition between women, or
it's pinning women against each other.
Yeah.
We got enough shit that we do already that pins against each other.
Yeah, right.
There's also this other thing I've been seeing, because like iPhones are everywhere, right? And so there's pictures that have been going viral on the internet of people holding up their phones, and photographers like can't get the beautiful shot, so they're having cell phone-less ceremonies. And I saw this other really cool sign that was like, oh, we don't have a bride's side and a groom's side, we're a mixed family now, so sit wherever you want. I think those are really refreshing too.
Agreed. Yeah. We did that too. We didn't have like a groom side and a bride side. We just had everybody kind of sit where they wanted to. And we also had a sign. I'm trying to think. I think what happened is, so my brother officiated our wedding, and he at the beginning made an announcement that it was like a phoneless ceremony, just to like, please turn your phones off during the ceremony, which you need to.
I feel like that needs to happen, like especially like, not to knock our family, but like,
oh my God,
I know that a picture will be on Facebook before I even say I do if we don't have a cell phoneless ceremony. But
Mom's gonna be playing Candy Crush like until you actually walk down the aisle.
Yeah. I went to a wedding in Maine in October when everything was good to go. It was a really small wedding, but it was interesting because it was at this very like rustic farm in the middle of Maine, in Gray, Maine, and they had ushers like giving out the information brochure, like not a brochure, but you know what I mean, like the
itinerary.
The itinerary, like the agenda. And I was like, oh, like where should we sit? Like, it's not labeled. And they're like, oh, just wherever. I'm like, all right, let's just pick a place in the back and just mind your own business and just chill out back here. But my favorite wedding tradition is the no ring, no bring. Like, that's something that unless you have been with your partner and I've met them and I'm friends with them, like, if you don't have a partner, like, I don't want them in the photos. Like, I don't want, like, I'm not paying money for a person who I've never met before. That's just going to be like the partner of the week. So that to me, and no kids either, is like, that's a new and upcoming trend. So I just, yeah, did you guys have kids at your wedding?
We did have kids. Yeah. We didn't have all kids, but we had like a couple of my shouldn't say better. I don't know why I just said better. Some of my close girlfriends have kids already. And so all their kids were invited. Trying to think, we had quite a few kids actually, but that's also like, Aiden and I both work with kids. We love kids. To us, it was like, that wasn't something that was a deal breaker, but I totally think for most of my friends, they had weddings where there was like a strict no kids kind of like rule to that. And I also respect that. I think it's kind of just what you're looking for. So
yeah. And for us, like, we come from older families. So like, we are the kids. Like,
we're the youngest.
Kaylee's the youngest out of all of them.
Yeah.
So.
I remember going to a wedding when I was like in 4th grade and there was a kids table, which I guess is fine. But I remember like a lot of kids, the families go home after like 10 o'clock anyway. And then the adults are just left over. But if you have sort of a themed wedding, like a bud wedding, I think that would be a good criteria for no kids. It just depends on what type of party you want to have, where the venue is. If it's on a yacht, maybe, I don't know, kids, but like, you know, or maybe in a museum, I don't know. There's certainly a lot of untraditional venues too, speaking of. I would love to have some kind of like urban wedding in a museum. Would be so cool. An aquarium wedding.
I'm so curious now. So I know I'm like flipping the script a little bit, but for both of you, like, what are the things when you think of like in the future getting married at some point? Like, what are the things to you that feel like the most important? I'm just curious. Like,
Brittany, you can go first.
You already know. You already know it's cranking.
Yeah, I already know.
So here's something that if my future in-laws watch this, they will not be happy with me. But my partner and I both do not want religious weddings. And I've mentioned to this in the first part of our show, but we are from 2 different religions, which obviously takes a lot more conversation than most individuals who are non-practicing. But like, he comes from a stricter religion than I come from, which is Roman Catholic. And since we both can't get our way, we decided that we both don't want to get married in a church. So for me, what's the most important is to not get married in a church, just because that's what we both agreed on. And for us, it's going to be the worst obstacle we'll have to get over because of those family influences. But besides that, like the no cell phones, like I know how media can affect people. And like, for me, like, I want people to just pay attention and be there for us. And I always envision like a very casual wedding. Like, Kaylee knows, like, if I could just get married in like a backyard with like hamburgers and hot dogs
and a jukebox,
that's me. Like, I would DJ my own wedding and it would just be like a party. Like,
that sounds like ideal though. Why couldn't you? Is it because of like family pressure maybe?
Yeah, family pressure is definitely like a big one. I mean, I know it's not the classiest, but like, I'm also not like the classiest person. So it would be very, a very like Brittany and Alexi wedding. Because that's just who we are. Like, we just play board games and listen to cool music together and go to concerts when it's not COVID. So like, that would be more towards our personality. But, you know, thinking about family influences, and especially if our families are going to help out, like, more like a rustic farm theme. Like, we already, like, we're not engaged at all, but you know, having an idea.
Alexi, I hope you're listening to this.
Yeah. Hint,
hint, wink, wink. But like, you know, a nice like farm Airbnb in like near Stowe would be nice. And like just having like, we don't need like the big flowers or the anything. Like my idea is just a nice rustic, like printing out pictures of ourselves and like having like that would be the wedding favors, if like putting it in nice like Dollar Tree, nicer like wood frames, and just having it more like antique or thrifted even. That's more my style. Like if I could keep it under 10,000, I'm in my glory.
Yeah.
I don't need the whole
Sounds
shebang.
amazing. Yeah, I think that sounds like so much fun. And that's like, I feel like when it's more intimate and sort of like catered to who you are, people have more fun because it feels just like really personal and like intentional.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I remember my parents went to a wedding. They've been to a ton of weddings, but they've been to a wedding that was $10,000 and they've been to a wedding that's $60,000. And they always say they have more fun at a more intimate style wedding than a gigantic big one. And they say that in their experience, usually couples who have a gigantic party either regret it or they end up getting divorced and regret it. And it's like, why are you paying all this money then? Like, so yeah, you just have to keep in mind the important things in life. And I don't know if I've said this, but my partner's name is Danny. And I've joked with Danny, I was like, let's just like hike a mountain and elope. Like, let's just hike Mount Mansfield and like get married on top of it. And he's like, no, you wouldn't want that. And I definitely think it is important for family to be there. And I was telling Brittany before that my favorite ever wedding movie is Father of the Bride. Have you ever seen that, Jesse?
I love that movie so much.
And that in my head, that is the perfect wedding, right? And obviously in reality, you can't really have that because money, and also like we don't live in a beautiful like house in Connecticut and like, but definitely something like vintage inspired, eclectic. We were looking into the Woodstock Inn in Vermont, like just the cutest little New England wedding you've ever seen.
There. Oh my God.
And I was also like, it's very important we either have food trucks at our cocktail hour or Ben and Jerry's for dessert instead of cake.
Yes.
Everyone likes ice cream, like,
And food trucks are like so fun and just very Vermonty.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. There's so many ways like you can skew it to like your personality. And like luckily Kaylee and I come from a family where like we have somebody who's a great baker, somebody who's a great cook, somebody who's Kaylee's the artsy one, so she could do like everybody save the dates and stuff, and like the DIY pieces, and like
we got a whole crew.
Organized one. So like within our family, I feel like we can pull off two very intricate weddings, like very personalized weddings with like minimal budget.
Yeah. Hopefully.
That's so awesome.
One day.
Yeah. And I think it's important to keep in mind too, a lot of people are thinking about sustainability when it comes to their wedding too. Because like we've said before, like weddings are expensive and they're also a lot of pollution too, and like a lot of waste. So thinking about like, instead of throwing out like rice or plastic confetti, like think about throwing something out that's more friendly toward the environment, and just maybe thrifting your centerpieces is like a great idea to save money and also be sustainable too, is like reusing things. So those are just like some things to keep in mind that are trendy nowadays.
Yeah, there are so many people I see on Facebook Marketplace like selling like bulk wedding things that they used, and even if they have like chalk marker, you could just wipe it away with Windex and like redo it. And using resourced materials to make it personal. That may make it more personal than anything you could buy at David's Bridal or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Jesse, was there any big problems you ran into when planning your wedding? Was there anything that went like totally wrong and you were like, oh my God, what is going on?
Let me think. That's a really good question. I feel like I was just talking to Aiden a little bit before this and just like trying to get his perspective on things too. And I feel like we were so lucky. Like we loved all of our vendors. I will say there was one, I'm not going to say who the vendor was. There was one vendor that was kind of unresponsive, and that for me is like a really big trigger. Like, please respond to me promptly. Like if you send me an email, I'm going to respond back to you within like maybe 20 minutes. So for me, that's a value. Like I want somebody who's responsive. So there was one vendor who was a little bit non-responsive. It ended up being totally fine in the end. But that for me was hard, which again, it was a small bump. It wasn't anything that was like earth shattering or super detrimental to like the day in any way. But let me think in the planning. I'm trying to think. I feel now like I'm being arrogant because I feel like there had to have been something that went wrong or something that was like stressful.
Didn't you get a nosebleed?
Well, that was what I was thinking of, Kaylee, when you asked the question. But that was like the planning. So yes, I think probably there's actually two things that happened the day of that were a little stressful, but so like probably like 15 minutes before the ceremony began, I got a nosebleed. Oh, and luckily like nothing got on my dress. Yeah, everyone was so great. Like the planner came over and she had like an ice pack on my neck. My brother was like pinching my nose. My brother's like the best. He was like pinching my nose and like trying to like get me to like lean my head back. That was a little stressful. And then actually I threw up during the party, not because I was drinking. I drank very, very little, but I just think it was like nerves a little bit. And so I told Aiden during dinner, I'm like, I'm just going to walk outside, need some fresh air. And I like threw up behind a tree.
Oh no.
So like I had some weird bodily things.
Well, you made it pass and we got it a year now.
You looked beautiful the whole day. Like nobody could have noticed.
Those were two small bumps, but
yeah. I remember talking to Aiden before your wedding, before he left for the wedding and the honeymoon. And one of the things that he got advice from somebody at where we work was make sure you kind of schedule moments with just you and your partner, because you'll get so wrapped up in the day and just trying to please everybody else that you'll kind of just forget about the person that you just said I do to for the rest of your life. So I hope you took their advice and you guys had some private moments to just like breathe and just chill, just the two of you, to just reflect on the day.
We did. I feel like one thing that I really loved that we did was we did do a first look, which I know, again, that's something that some people do and some people don't. We loved that because I feel like that really helped both of us to feel less nervous, was to like see each other, be able to talk, kind of touch base. I loved that part. That was one of my favorite parts of the day, was the first look. So that really helped. And I feel like that gave us like our photographer came to the first look. So she was awesome though. She was like really in the distance and it was still like we were alone. It felt like she was really good about not being intrusive. So that was like a good 20 minutes to a half an hour that we had by ourselves. And then I'm trying to think, I feel like we were together a good part of the night, but we definitely, I got that same advice of like, just make sure that you're able to kind of like step back and see everything that's going on. And kind of know what that's like you created that. And that's something, all these people are there to support you, which was just kind of a really like surreal, magical feeling, as cliche as that sounds.
Yeah. I love the trend of the first look. Like I was telling Alexi, like that's something that like I definitely want, because not only do you get that private time, but also for me, I always thought like I understand the concept of cocktail hour because that allows for the guests to be distracted while you can go take pictures, but it gets a little crazy and a little hectic. And I've been at weddings where like they try to squeeze in too many pictures during cocktail hour that like you can't have that private time. So for me, it's like getting the big pictures out of the way before it gets like super chaotic at the reception and like you start to get disheveled as you do more things and depending on how long your ceremony goes. So yeah, the first look is definitely like a good positive trend for, in my opinion anyway. Like I love that people are implementing that more and more.
Totally. And what we did too, Brittany, because we also were like, we don't want photos to take up time that we could be with like our family and friends.
Exactly.
So we did first look and then we did all of our photos before the wedding.
I love that. See, I'm such an advocate for that because you get, you know, if the first couple of pictures you get like something's wrong or something, you still have that time. And like, it's not so hectic where like,
not stressful.
Another coworker who they got married at a family property of some sort. And it was a gorgeous wedding. She had everything down to the T. And she was like you, Jesse, is like a very type A person. So you knew it had to go off without a hitch. And the one detail that wasn't planned was people started to arrive earlier. So people actually like came to the ceremony while they were still doing pictures. So it's kind of like you kind of have to just like time it a little bit when if you are doing a first look in family photos, is to give that warning to people, like don't come before like the ceremony starts, or like only show up like a half an hour before the ceremony starts, not like an hour and a half. Like you'll be good, you'll get a seat.
I already know that our grandma Betty's gonna show up like 2 days before the ceremony. Like she's gonna
like I need my spot.
Yeah. Like she already shows up like 3 hours early to church. Like, oh my God, I can't even imagine our weddings. But yeah, and just I also want to ask you, Jesse, especially thinking about COVID moving forward and how long that environment's going to last. Do you have any advice for new brides going through the experience of planning a wedding?
Yeah, I would say like to really, I think what feels like the most important to me is like think about you and your partner and like who you are, what's important to you. And hopefully if you're in a situation where you have family that's supportive and kind of open-minded, like do the things that feel genuine and feel like good to you. Like I just think not to get wrapped up in like the have-tos. I think that can become really easy. But like thinking about things that are really authentic to you and like making it collaborative, make your partner part of it. I think a lot of my friends are like, I did everything myself and like my partner doesn't care. But like I get that, but also it's not just about the bride, it's about both of you, and it's a day that's about that commitment to one another. So I feel like making sure that your partner feels like they're part of that, because I think there's sort of like a tradition of the woman it's about the bride, it's all about the bride. Husband's just kind of there or the fiance is just kind of there for the ride. And I think that people can kind of pick up on that. Like I feel like it should be about both of you. So I think that's another thing I would say too, is like make sure your partner feels included.
Yeah, especially if you're going to be spending the rest of your life with them.
Yeah,
it's a good precedent to set.
Teamwork.
Like, team, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I always find it funny that like wedding guests come and like the woman of the guest couple is like, oh, we got them like a toaster, and the guy's like, I don't know what what we got. Like it's in a shiny box, that's all I know.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. This has been a ball. Whenever Brittany and I get married one day, we will definitely take your advice and maybe spice up our weddings a little bit with new traditions. Hey. Yeah. But thank you again so much for joining us on this episode of LadyProbs. For all you followers out there, thank you so much for listening. We come out with new episodes every Monday, so feel free to follow us on Instagram. It's at LadyProbs Podcast. We come out with spicy posts all the time. Also check us out on Facebook and of course YouTube too. It's the same name, LadyProbs Podcast. So thanks so much for listening. I giggled at the end. I love that.